I, 26-year-old female, work for an amazing small engineering company, but have always had an issue with a woman named Cheryl. Cheryl is a holdover office manager from when the current owner's dad founded the company, and the company is her queendom. I actually feel very sorry for her because she's divorced, her kids don't speak with her, and I think the company is the only thing that she has going in her life. She is like a grandma to the current owner, but he has admitted that he can't wait until she retires because she is overbearing with him too. The company had an amazing year, and our owner decided that we were essentially going to shut down for the month of June, and he was going to host an optional retreat in Mexico, where he would pay for all food, drinks, and accommodations, but we had to pay for our plane ticket. When I found out Cheryl was not planning on going, I could not sign up fast enough. I flew down with a friend coworker, and the second we got our bags put away, it was bikinis on and straight to the swim-up bar. On the way down the hallway, we ran smack into Cheryl. We tried to be pleasant, but she looked me up and down like I was dressed like a streetwalker, and she looked so disgusted. My friend and I walked along smirking that we weren't in the queendom and made jokes about finding Cheryl a nice man, so she'd either get laid or kidnapped. By the time we got to the pool, Cheryl had sent out a group text reminding us that we were on a work trip and we should choose our outfits to reflect the prestige of the company paying for the trip. We could not stop laughing, and we agreed that our best bet was to avoid Cheryl for the week. When we were on our way back to the room, Cheryl intercepted us in the hallway. She seriously must have been staring out her peephole waiting on us. And she said that when she sent the group text, she meant that I should change out of that immediately, she said while pointing basically at my butt. I said I was sorry, Cheryl, but this isn't a work trip and my bikini was totally appropriate for the resort. She said, "We are a company founded on Christian principles and we should dress as such." I suck so bad at confrontation, and this was one of those things where 5 minutes after I had a million witty things to say, but all I could come up with was that I will wear a sarong in the hotel. But this is all I brought for the pool and beach. She said, "You get paid well enough, go buy something more appropriate." The "get paid enough" comment made me see red because that is so none of her business. And I worked my butt off through a male-dominated field and shoot jobs, and took a huge risk to work for a small company because I wanted a job that cared about me. I told her, "Cheryl, I hate confrontation, but you can go frick yourself. That was so out of line." For the first time since I've met Cheryl, she was actually speechless and just turned around and went in her room and closed the door. My friend thought it was the funniest thing she'd ever seen and said she was so proud of me for sticking up for myself. Initially, I felt good about it too, but ever since yesterday, I am just racked with guilt. And I feel like a major jerk. I feel like there were a million other ways I could have handled it, and I should not have let Cheryl see that she upset me. She is a very lonely person, and though I don't like her, I don't need to say such cruel things to her. I feel like a jerk. Am I the jerk? To add, for the people asking, my swimsuit was from a company called Coco Loba. They really only make one style, and I guess it's probably best described as cheeky and not really a thong, but they have a tendency to ride up my butt since I have wider hips. Yes, my cheeks were visible, but it was far from dental floss. Now for an update. Wow, people are really focused on the swimwear. I do have pics of the swimsuit on me when I was tubing with my family last weekend on my Instagram, but not sure if that's safe to send out a link. This is my first ever post on a sub like this, so I guess can I get some input on that? Also, my friend actually had on a one-piece, but it's a full-on thong. It's very cute on her, but she didn't get the same look from Cheryl because she had a cover-up on her bottom when we were in the hotel. Almost forgot. I had zero idea this would blow up the way it did, and I had no idea this would get so much internet snark. Please keep in mind, I tried to post this originally on the other Am I the Jerk sub, but they have a word limit, so I had to come up with some word economy, and even then didn't make it, so I posted here. Some of the things I wish I could have included in the original. 1. This is not a work trip. In fact, the Evite said specifically it's not a work trip. It's a tangible bonus for a job well done this year. There is no mention of a dress code, and I am dressed well in line with other women at the resort. In fact, some are way more scantily dressed than me. The resort is huge, and I would guess there are probably 2,000 plus guests total. I think maybe 10 people from our office are coming plus some families and kids. There are no dinners, events, meetings, hangouts, or obligations, so no way could this be considered a work trip. 2. I wish I could have been more clear about the company closing for the month. We aren't closed, but have no projects due until mid-July, and we all have the option to work from home, take time for graduations and vacations. This hasn't happened in the 3 years I've been here, and I don't think it will happen again. But it's been really nice. The trip to Mexico is also not a month long. It's up to a week centered around yesterday to Saturday. 3. I am not some mean high schooler. I'm actually very, very shy and bookish. I am probably considered pretty, but it took me a long time to see myself as such. I was a swimmer in high school, and it took me years, well after college in fact, to even try on a bikini. I decided last year I liked the cheeky look, because it's probably more common than not where we go tubing on the weekends. 4. The part about getting Cheryl laid or kidnapped was a total joke, and we meant no harm, and it was only between the two of us. It really surprises me people are so hung up on that, and I find it really hard to believe that most everyone hasn't made a similar sort of joke about a frustrating coworker. If you haven't, I guess that's good, but gallows humor is huge in the engineering field, and I deal with jokes along those lines all day long at work. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. I believe you said it was optional in your post, and you had to pay for your ticket to get there. I'd say you get to wear whatever the hell you want whenever you want. Either that, or I'd wait until the bosses show up and go down to the pool and beach and get in with full business attire and make mention that what's-her-face said this is what we were supposed to be doing. But then again, I'm a jackass that way. Comment 2. It might be worth letting the owner know that he might hear something from Cheryl. I hope he's sitting down when you tell him so you can watch him fall out of the chair laughing. At least that's how I hope it goes down. She had it coming. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for all the feedback on my last post. So, a lot has happened since then, and I wanted to give you an update on the situation with Cheryl. After our confrontation, I spent the next day trying to avoid Cheryl as much as possible. My friend and I decided to go on a snorkeling trip organized by the resort. It was a beautiful day, and I was starting to feel a bit better about everything. But of course, Cheryl was on the same boat. She sat at the front, away from everyone, and I could see she was avoiding eye contact with me. I felt a pang of guilt again, but I tried to push it aside and enjoy the trip. Later that evening, the resort hosted a beach bonfire with live music. It was a perfect setting to unwind, and I was looking forward to it. As the night went on, I noticed Cheryl sitting alone at a table nursing a drink. I couldn't help but feel bad for her. My friend nudged me and said, "Maybe you should go talk to her, clear the air." I hesitated, but eventually decided she was right. I walked over to Cheryl and asked if I could join her. She looked surprised, but nodded. We sat in awkward silence for a few minutes before I finally spoke up. "Cheryl, I'm really sorry about what I said the other day. I was out of line, and I didn't mean to hurt you." Cheryl sighed and looked at me, her eyes softening a bit. "I appreciate that. I know I can be overbearing sometimes, but I just want what's best for the company. It's all I have left." That comment hit me hard. I knew Cheryl was lonely, but hearing her say it out loud made it more real. We ended up talking for a while, and I learned a lot about her. She told me about her divorce and how her kids stopped talking to her after she and her ex-husband split. She admitted that she threw herself into her work to cope with the loneliness. It was clear that the company was her lifeline, and she genuinely cared about it and everyone who worked there. The next day, I decided to take a break from the resort and explore the nearby town. I needed some time to process everything Cheryl had told me. As I wandered through the local market, I stumbled upon a small shop selling handmade jewelry. I remembered Cheryl mentioning how much she loved turquoise, so I decided to buy her a necklace as a peace offering. When I got back to the resort, I found Cheryl sitting by the pool, reading a book. I walked over and handed her the necklace. "I saw this and thought of you," I said. Cheryl looked at the necklace, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "This means a lot to me." That evening, we had a company dinner at one of the resort's restaurants. It was the first time everyone was together since we arrived. The atmosphere was relaxed, and it felt like a real vacation. Cheryl even seemed to be enjoying herself, chatting with some of our coworkers. I felt a sense of relief, knowing that we had made amends. The following day, something unexpected happened. The owner of the company called a meeting by the pool. He announced that he had decided to retire and was passing the company on to his son. Everyone was shocked, including Cheryl. She looked devastated. After the meeting, I found her sitting alone, staring at the ocean. I sat down next to her and asked if she was okay. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she said, her voice trembling. "This company has been my life for so long. I don't know how to let go." I didn't know what to say, but I knew I had to be there for her. "Cheryl, you've done so much for this company. Maybe it's time to focus on yourself and find something that makes you happy outside of work." Over the next few days, I noticed a change in Cheryl. She started to relax and enjoy the trip more. She even joined us for a few activities like a cooking class and a sunset cruise. It was like she was finally allowing herself to have fun and let go of some of the stress she had been carrying for so long. One evening, as we were all sitting around the bonfire again, Cheryl shared a story from her past that really touched me. She told us about how she used to love painting, but gave it up when she got married because her husband didn't support her passion. After the divorce, she never picked it up again because she felt like it was too late to start over. Hearing her talk about her lost passion made me realize how much she had sacrificed for her family and her job. I encouraged her to start painting again, and she seemed genuinely excited about the idea. It was like a light had been reignited in her. The rest of the trip was a lot more enjoyable, and I felt like we had all grown closer as a team. When we got back home, I made a point to check in on Cheryl regularly. I even signed us up for a local painting class together. It was amazing to see her rediscover her passion and find joy in something outside of work. Our relationship has improved significantly, and I no longer see her as just an overbearing office manager. She's a person with her own struggles and dreams, just like the rest of us. Thanks for reading, everyone. Am I the idiot for threatening to call the cops on my sister-in-law for dumping her baby on me? Just read a similar post and remembered this. My 23-year-old brother and 25-year-old sister-in-law live with me. They had a baby in December 22nd, and I expressly told them I wouldn't be able to watch him unless previously asked to. I wouldn't watch him for anything short of absolute emergency unless they had asked earlier, and I'd agreed. All of this was said and agreed upon before he was born. Well, about 2 months after he was born, they started asking me to take him for a minute, then they'd leave. At first, it was short periods, but it gradually got longer and longer until I reminded them about our agreement. It stopped for a while, but eventually they started doing it again. This process repeated on and off until the baby was about 6 months old, and I'd decided I'd had enough. So my sister-in-law asked me to watch the baby for a minute, her exact words, and I told her, "Okay, I have plans in a bit though, so I can't watch him for long." She told me it wouldn't be long and walked out of the house. About 20 minutes pass and she's still not back, so I called her. She said she was about to walk into a movie and would call me when it was over. No? So I tell her, "I have a job interview and I have to leave in 20 minutes. If you're not back by then, I will leave him in his crib and call the police to report an abandoned child." She arrived just as I was leaving the house, and they've never left him with me like that again. But I still get so much crap during holidays and such when the entire family is together. My mother also complains that she now has to watch him for the last-minute stuff they want to do. So I have to know, am I the idiot? To add, we all live in my parents' house together. I have lived there for almost 4 years, and they only moved in just before the baby was born. So I have the habit of calling the house mine when technically it is not. Almost forgot. Literally copy and pasted from my comment. To clarify, my parents do not live with us. They have an apartment. My parents were in the apartment way before I moved into the house. After we all moved out, they downsized and rented the house out. Their last tenants left about a month before I was discharged from the military, and my parents asked if I wanted to rent the house from them. I said yes and moved in, and I've been paying the mortgage, and since my brother moved in, we've been splitting the bills. My parents do not want to live in the house because they are old and disabled, and the house isn't really disabled-friendly. My mother has diabetes, a torn medial collateral ligament and meniscus in her knee, and has dislocated her shoulder recently. My father has a herniated disc in his back, and whatever the disease is called that slowly fuses your bones together, so he's mostly in a wheelchair and occasionally uses a walker. The house is not designed for wheelchair use, so he can't even get to the bathrooms. He can only get to the living room and kitchen. I'm so sorry my parents' disabilities have led them to not living in the home they own, but don't want to renovate for things they deem unnecessary. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot. How can "for a minute" result in her almost walking into a movie theater? That is not a 1-minute thing. Your sister-in-law is dishonest. I probably would be more extreme and say, okay, I will start counting to 60. Once I hit 60, I am going. No one can command your time without discussing it with you. Comment 2. Not the idiot. They were exploiting you, and you enforced your boundaries. Good for you. By the way, when you say living with you, does that mean in your apartment? Then give them a deadline to leave. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So, things have taken a turn for the worse since my last update. After the incident where my sister-in-law left the baby with me to go watch a movie, I thought we had finally reached an understanding. But I was wrong. It all started last week when my brother and sister-in-law had a huge fight. I don't know all the details, but it was bad enough that my brother stormed out of the house and didn't come back for 2 days. During that time, my sister-in-law was a wreck, and of course she started leaning on me more than ever to watch the baby. One evening, she asked me to watch him again, saying she needed to clear her head. I was hesitant but agreed, thinking it would be a short walk or something. Hours passed, and she didn't return. I called her multiple times, but she didn't pick up. I was stuck with the baby all night, missing out on a work project I had to finish. When she finally came back the next morning, she looked disheveled and didn't offer any explanation. I was furious, but decided to let it go for the moment. The next day, my brother returned and they had another argument. This time it was about money. Apparently, they were behind on their share of the bills, and my brother had been hiding it from her. She was livid and accused him of being irresponsible. He fired back, saying she was never around to help with the baby and that he was doing everything he could. It was a mess, and I was caught in the middle of it. To make matters worse, my parents got wind of the situation. They called me, concerned about the baby's well-being and the tension in the house. My mom, despite her health issues, offered to take the baby for a few days to give us all a break. I reluctantly agreed, thinking it might help, but it only made things more complicated. My brother and sister-in-law started arguing about whether or not they should move out and find their own place. My brother wanted to stay and work things out, but my sister-in-law was adamant about leaving. During this time, I started noticing some strange behavior from my sister-in-law. She was constantly on her phone, texting someone, and being very secretive about it. One night, I overheard her talking to someone on the phone, and it sounded like she was making plans to leave my brother. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it was hard not to worry about what was going on. Then, a few days ago, everything came to a head. My sister-in-law packed up her things and left, taking the baby with her. She didn't leave a note or tell anyone where she was going. My brother was devastated and started blaming himself for everything that had happened. He confided in me that he had been struggling with depression and felt like he was failing as a husband and father. It was heartbreaking to see him like that, and I didn't know how to help. In the midst of all this, I started reflecting on our family's history and how we got to this point. Growing up, my brother and I were always close, but things changed when he met my sister-in-law. She was always very independent and had a strong personality, which sometimes clashed with my brother's more laid-back nature. They had their ups and downs, but I never thought it would come to this. I also thought about my parents and how their health issues have affected our family dynamics. My mom has always been the glue that held us together, but her health has been declining, and she can't do as much as she used to. My dad's condition has also put a strain on everyone, and I think it's taken a toll on my brother and sister-in-law's relationship as well. As the days went by, my brother tried to reach out to my sister-in-law, but she wasn't responding to his calls or texts. He was worried about the baby and didn't know what to do. I suggested he talk to a lawyer to understand his rights and options, but he was hesitant, not wanting to escalate the situation. Then, out of the blue, my sister-in-law showed up at the house with the baby. She looked exhausted and said she needed to talk. We all sat down and she explained that she had been staying with a friend, trying to figure things out. She admitted that she had been feeling overwhelmed and didn't know how to handle everything. She apologized for leaving without saying anything, and said she wanted to try and work things out with my brother. They had a long, emotional conversation, and it seemed like they were making some progress. But just when I thought things might be getting better, my brother dropped a news. He confessed that he had been seeing a therapist and had been diagnosed with severe depression. He had been hiding it from everyone, including my sister-in-law, because he didn't want to burden anyone with his problems. My sister-in-law was shocked and didn't know how to react. She felt betrayed that he had kept something so important from her, and it brought up all the trust issues they had been dealing with. They decided to take some time apart to figure things out, and my sister-in-law took the baby and went back to her friend's place. Now the house feels emptier than ever, and I'm left wondering what will happen next. My brother is trying to focus on his mental health, but he's struggling without his family. My parents are worried about the baby and the future of our family, and I'm stuck in the middle trying to support everyone while dealing with my own frustrations and concerns. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for telling my husband's friends to stop criticizing our kids? I feel like I'm trapped between a rock and a hard place, honestly. My husband and I have 4 children. We gave birth to our last baby just 7 months ago. Our last baby was incredibly unexpected. I had my tubes tied 8 years ago, and therefore we weren't exactly prepared. Our home was not big enough, etc. So we made the decision to sell our home and move into a bigger place. We sold our home when I was 6 months pregnant and moved an hour away in my husband's childhood town. Found an absolutely gorgeous farmhouse well below our budget. It was perfect. Until it wasn't. Moving to my husband's hometown was probably the worst possible decision we could have made for our family. Since we moved into this home, he started having visitors nearly daily. This is not normal and never has been. I told him I was fed up with visitors being here so often after a month or so he started going out all the time, every weekend and at least once during the week, for hours at a time. When he was home, all his childhood buddies were calling him 6 or more times a night, asking him to come do favors for them, come have a fire, come drink some beers, etc. And even if my husband didn't want to, he would still go. It caused many fights because this still continued after I gave birth. It did not change until he came home from one of his nightly hangouts at 2 a.m. to me packing all of me and the kids' stuff. The baby was maybe 3 months old at this point. He begged me to stay and promised big changes. And honestly, he has stood true to it. He stopped going out all but once or twice a month, and I was totally fine with that. Here's the new issue, however. His buddies John, Cindy, John's girlfriend, and Ben have been coming here quite often recently. We have a fire pit and live right on the river, so they bring their kids, and we have BBQs and whatever. My postpartum depression is toned down now, so I don't mind visitors. But for the past 2 times that these people have been here, they keep making comments about how much they don't like their kids, saying fuck those kids so many times a night that I've lost count. They even say it to me and my husband whenever we say anything about needing to do something for our kids. I've always defended all the children, and my husband was originally, but now he just sits by silent, which bothers me a lot. Like he's developing the same attitude as his buddies. I've noticed his patience with the kids is dropping since hanging out with these people, and he's a lot more snappy. But last night, I really had a moment because Ben gets on the phone with his oldest daughter, 16-year-old, who was at their home, and he was screaming at her through the phone, calling her fucking dumb, ignorant, etc., right in front of absolutely everyone. When he got off the phone, he looks at my husband and says, "Fuck them freaking kids, man." So I said, "No, that was hurtful. We actually like our kids." Ben gets pissed as soon as I say he's hurtful but doesn't say anything. I told my husband last night when everyone left that I don't want these people here anymore. I don't like surrounding myself with adults who act so ignorant to children. I'm raising my kids to know that isn't okay, and you are who you hang out with. So by hanging out with these people, we are not setting a good example. My husband said that Ben was over the top, and he agrees with me on that. But that John and Cindy are just joking when they say it. I told him absolutely not. You don't joke about hating your kids to the level that they do, and they are just as bad as Ben because they were laughing when he was screaming at his daughter, and I don't want them here at all. None of them. He thinks I'm trying to control him and says that I'm trying to ensure that he has absolutely no social life outside of me and the kids, because I always find an issue with people he hangs out with. Am I the jerk? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, not the idiot times a million. These people sound toxic to your husband's psyche and your family. Hard to know if it's a location problem or a husband problem, though. If he doesn't prioritize his family, then he isn't much of a husband. Sounds like the people around you all got trapped in a situation they don't like, and instead of improving themselves, they take it out on the children. Not a vibe you want to bring to your own household. Comment 2. Not the idiot, 100% on your side here. You are the average of the 5 people you associate with, and these guys are atrocious. Would he want you hanging out with girls who hated their husbands and insulted them constantly in front of you? Put your foot down and stand firm. I wouldn't want a bunch of deadbeats around me either. Now for the update, thanks for all the comments from the last post. So here's what's been happening since then. After that big argument with my husband about his friends, things got pretty tense around the house. We didn't talk much for a couple of days, and when we did, it was mostly about the kids or other mundane stuff. I could tell he was still upset about me not wanting his friends around, but I stood my ground. I didn't want those negative influences around our children. A week later, my husband came home from work and told me that John and Cindy had invited us to a BBQ at their place. I was hesitant, but he insisted it would be a good opportunity to clear the air and maybe find some common ground. Reluctantly, I agreed to go, hoping it might help ease the tension between us. The BBQ started off fine. The kids were playing in the yard, and the adults were chatting and grilling. But as the evening went on, the same old comments started creeping back in. John and Cindy made a few offhand remarks about their kids, and I could see my husband getting uncomfortable. He didn't say anything, but I could tell he was starting to see my point. Then something unexpected happened. Cindy's youngest, a little boy around 5 years old, fell and scraped his knee. Instead of comforting him, Cindy snapped at him to stop crying and man up. I couldn't hold back any longer. I walked over, picked up the boy, and started cleaning his wound. I told him it was okay to cry and that he was brave for letting me help him. Cindy looked at me like I had 2 heads, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let a child suffer because of her ignorance. That night, on the drive home, my husband was quiet. I could see the wheels turning in his head. When we got home and put the kids to bed, he finally spoke up. He admitted that seeing Cindy treat her son like that had been a wake-up call. He realized that maybe I was right about the kind of people we were surrounding ourselves with. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step in the right direction. But before I get to that, there's more. A few days after the BBQ, Ben showed up at our house unannounced. He was clearly drunk and started ranting about his daughter again. My husband tried to calm him down, but Ben wasn't having it. He started yelling at me, accusing me of turning my husband against him and ruining their friendship. I was scared, but I stood my ground and told him to leave. My husband backed me up and told Ben he wasn't welcome here anymore if he couldn't respect our family. That incident was a turning point for my husband. He saw firsthand how toxic his friends had become and how it was affecting our family. He apologized for not seeing it sooner and promised to be more mindful of the people we let into our lives. It was a huge relief, but I knew it wouldn't be easy for him to cut ties with his childhood friends. In the weeks that followed, my husband made a conscious effort to spend more time with us and less time with his old friends. He started planning family outings and even took up a new hobby, gardening. It was something we could do together, and it helped us reconnect. The kids loved it too, and it became a new way for us to bond as a family. But the fallout from cutting ties with his friends wasn't easy. John and Cindy tried to guilt-trip my husband, saying he was abandoning them and that they needed him. It was hard for him to hear, but he stayed strong. He knew that our family came first, and he wasn't willing to compromise that anymore. One night, while we were sitting on the porch after putting the kids to bed, my husband opened up about his childhood. He told me how John and Ben had always been there for him, especially after his parents' divorce. They were like brothers to him, and that's why it was so hard for him to see their flaws. It made sense, and I felt a pang of guilt for not understanding sooner. But I also knew that we couldn't let the past dictate our present. He also shared a story about his father, who had been a strict and often harsh man. My husband had always vowed to be different, to be a better father. But he realized that by hanging out with people like John and Ben, he was slipping into old patterns. It was a powerful moment, and it made me see him in a new light. He wasn't just being stubborn. He was grappling with deep-seated issues from his past. As we continued to navigate this new chapter, I noticed a change in my husband. He was more patient with the kids, more present. He started helping out more around the house and even took on some of the nighttime feedings with the baby. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. But before I wrap this up, there's one more thing. My husband recently reconnected with an old friend from college, someone who had always been a positive influence. They started meeting up for coffee and talking about life, family, and everything in between. It was a breath of fresh air for him, and it gave him a new perspective on what true friendship should look like. So that's where we are now. It's been a challenging month, but I feel like we're finally on the right track. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.